My name is Ernie Humphrey. I'm the Vice President of Educational Programs for Proformative, the online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar, Automating Financial Consolidation and Reporting. With today's stringent controls on reporting timeliness and accuracy and increased internal demands for meaningful financial information, optimizing the financial close and disclosure process is more important than ever for companies. This webinar will focus on current and emerging trends and the technology available to ease the enormous challenges posed in effectively and accurately consolidating company financial results across business units, multiple subsidiaries, and international locations. I would like to thank NetSuite, whose commitment to thought leadership helps us make this event possible and deliver it at no cost. A quick note on today's agenda. First, we'll hear a presentation from our featured speaker, Tom Kelly, and then we'll move into our interactive Q&A session where we will spend the remainder of our hour. We would like this to be an interactive experience for you, so if you have any questions at any time, please go to the questions area in your GoToWebinar control panel and send us your questions. We can't promise to get all of them in, but we'll do our best and we'll follow up afterwards with any questions we did not get to during the webinar. A few more logistical notes about the webinar. A link to today's presentation is already available up on Proformative.com. We'll be posting the webinar video tomorrow as well. Those who would like CPE credits through NASBA will need to answer all the polling questions during the event and should have pre-registered for CPE credits. For any questions on CPE credits, please contact Chris Brower at cbrower@Proformative.com. We'll have Chris's contact information up again in the closing section of the webinar, so don't worry if you didn't catch her email address. You will be asked to take a short survey regarding today's webinar right after the webinar concludes. We greatly appreciate your feedback regarding our event today, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our attendees for their valuable time. A quick word about Proformative. Proformative is the largest growing online community resource for senior-level corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. Proformative connects corporate finance leaders to provide instant advice and insights on the tough financial and strategic challenges they face each and every day. Okay, let's get started by introducing today's featured speaker, Tom Kelly, Managing Director at T. Edward Incorporated. Tom serves as strategic partner and CFO, CIO for several unique companies. Portfolio companies include Cardia Health Systems and OnPoint Medical Diagnostics, organizations that were created by commercializing software intellectual property from leading healthcare institutions. His insights have been gleaned from years of working with clients, striving to build on-demand environments that leverage the cloud to ensure crisp and timely execution of a company's strategy. Tom has held senior management positions with large publicly held companies like PepsiCo and Deluxe Corporation, as well as small cap and privately held entities such as Ebenex and PeopleNet Communications. He is a CPA and an MBA in finance from Fordham University and holds a BA in accounting from North Carolina State University. With that, it is my distinct pleasure to hand the floor over to Tom Kelly. Tom?
Great. Thank you, Ernie. I appreciate that. Let's get into this. We're going to be talking about consolidations and all the wondrous challenges we have facing us these days with consolidations, whether it's within one country or across several countries. But we'll also talk about how the cloud can help you really kind of jumpstart and help you out with this process and make it much more efficient, much more informative, accurate, and intuitive. So let's talk about supporting today's global business environment. And I want to be clear about this. Let's say global, as we talk about this, consolidations, as I say, can happen within one country. So there's plenty of companies that I work with that have several subsidiaries here in the U.S. and they're just solely U.S. based. So the challenge, believe it or not, I think is relatively the same. However, some of the requirements and details might be different. But in essence, let's talk about where your employees are and your customers. So they're spread around the globe or spread around the country. There's a complex currency translation environment that exists today and the revaluation of that and the requirements that we have for accounting. And that is true across the board as things are changing almost daily in that area. There are large numbers of intercompanies and minority interest eliminations that you're going to have to perform. And some of us may do those manually through Excel, et cetera, but I believe it is a rather tedious process to do that. And then think about the local tax compliance. Just sales tax here in the U.S. is mind-boggling. GST and PST, value-added tax, et cetera. There's a whole host of things that, from a compliance standpoint, you can really get dinged and fined for if you're not on top of it. And that goes in line with the next one, which is the increasing need for an audit trail. So if we don't have that audit trail and the tax auditor comes in, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a nice little fine. So, and ultimately, when you get down to IT in general, scant, if you will, a nice English word there, scant local IT resources. When you think about that, if you are global, or again, even here within the U.S., having the appropriate IT resources available on site is getting to be more and more of a challenge for companies, both large and small. And you combine that with the substantial local and global change and changes that are going on today. There's a greater need for visibility into the business. So being able to understand exactly what's happening, not just locally but globally, such that you can explain, if you're a public company, when you're doing your quarterly calls or whatever it might be, you're going to want to make sure you're on top of things and that the investment community feels that from what you're telling them. The local sales tax changes, again, sales tax here in the U.S. plus the other ones, and even globally. I mean, taxes and tax laws change. So on some level, it's almost like a commodity, how quickly they can change. So trying to stay on top of that is almost not almost, but more than a full-time job. Geographically, there's a lot of regulatory change when certain types of accounting and reporting is required. So really trying to be able to stay on top of that is quite a gargantuan effort. And then let's say we're a company that's going through mergers and acquisitions. There's all different types of laws across the world as to how you're going to account for that and how you're going to report on that. New billing models, right? So in this day and age, we talk about the cloud, the wonderful annuity billing. Being able to bill for that, recognize that revenue so that you're in compliance with the accounting procedures and policies of the areas you're operating within. And then even launching new subsidiaries and new geographies as an organization, being able to accomplish that somewhat seamlessly when you're going to come down to consolidating those results and reporting on those results. I talked a little bit about the shrinking IT resources. Again, I'm not so sure it's shrinking. It's just that there's a limited amount of resources for the amount of IT involvement that's going to be required if you're holistically on premise. And then I mentioned about the new billing modules, but the new revenue recognition models are pretty complex and pretty stringent how you need to do things. So being able to stay on top of those requirements, again, is quite the challenge. So here's a wonderful schematic, and let's talk about a company that is global. You've got the worldwide headquarters on top, and what you can see here is that picture is almost the same for every area. So we have this situation where we're at the corporate level, worldwide headquarters, and we've got various types of systems that we're using. They're pieced together. There's not a single database. You see Excel in there, which is the de facto reporting and requirement tool for many of us out there today. But then you go down to, let's say, the regions, right? The Americas, Europe, Asia Pacific. Again, you're going to have situations out there where you've got organizations using certain types of products and applications, again, not tied together, various different charts of accounts, you name it. It becomes very complex. And then you get into the country, as we were talking about, the tax requirements, the reporting requirements, the accounting regulation, being able to stay on top of those. And once again, when you get into the operating units, you have this existing mishmash, for lack of a better term, of your IT infrastructure, how your reporting comes together, how people interact with the applications to be able to provide information on how the organization is performing. And now with the wonders of technology, if we go back to that page, I apologize, there's going to be these lines, these spaghetti lines being drawn, or a hairball, if you will. I would argue that each one of these lines, you could probably put about 5 to 15 to 20 people on each one of those lines in terms of people that are involved in either making the application work right, getting information into the system, verifying that the information that goes to the next system is right. You name it. It's profound in terms of how much redundancy we have within an organization, such as a worldwide headquarter item, or fact B, even if you're here operating in the United States and you have 3 different departments across the United States. This scenario exists in spades out there across, across the continuum that is consolidation. So what does this mean? What does that schematic mean? What's the reality? What are the facts? Well, I think we could all argue or all agree that there's a lengthy cycle to roll up the financial results from the subsidiaries, right? So the ability to close your books on a timely basis becomes quite the anxiety-provoking, stress-enhancing process, because there are all these, pieces that you're trying to pull together. I've used the example of whack-a-mole, where you smack one of the moles down, you figure you got a lift, and then another one pops up. I mean, that's the visual I would give you in terms of what's going to happen with all this information coming in. The other thing, when you don't have this system configured such that you're on a single database, having visibility at the local level is almost an impossibility, or to get that visibility, there's a lot of manual interaction, effort, phone calls, resources, people, to be able to understand what's happening with the subsidiary's financials, the details of it. What does this all end up doing? I think what it really ends up doing is there's a lack of confidence in that financial data, from corporate to the subsidiaries, in that the information is not believable. Sometimes even the subsidiaries don't have the ability to understand what's going on because they have various composite systems and applications. So what does this mean? It's error-prone. It's definitely inefficient, and I would tell you it's extremely time-consuming. And even though we have these applications that we're using, you'd be surprised if you take a step back and look at these processes and how much manual interaction and intervention is required to do this. What you also find is, the term siloed, meaning that if you're going to look at the corporate performance for a company, or even a customer, let's say, unless you have this connectivity from beginning to end of that supply chain, it's very difficult to get that 360 view of what's really happening within an organization. The concept of order to cash. What does it take for us as an organization to build the product, ship the product, sell the product, collect the money, et cetera? That's a pretty profound process, and it's very difficult probably to pinpoint and get some details on that process across the continuum of a global entity. We've talked about this, but the onerous local accounting requirements, the tax compliance requirements, a lot of that is inherent in some of the issues that you may face. And what also ends up happening is there is a tendency to have some error-prone errors when you're managing that currency exchange in the rates, because you have to have historical accuracy, right? Because the currency rates are changing daily. So when you're reporting this information, how do you do that? How do you make sure you're consistent and compliant with what the requirements are, not just on a global level, but at the local level as well? So with that, we will go to our first polling question.
Oh, thank you very much, Tom. So now that we've outlined, a lot of the potential issues that people have, the first polling question is going to be around how many days it takes your company to consolidate and close monthly. First of all, I'd like to note, those of you in the audience who are here for CPE credits, you'll need to answer all polling questions throughout the webinar. Everyone in the audience, we'd very much appreciate your consideration in answering these questions. We consolidate this data and use for benchmarking, and we share that with you on Proformative. So Tom, as we have the poll up for another minute or so, can you share with us what the cloud has meant? So prior to the cloud, how long would it take you to consolidate and close monthly, and then what does that improvement look like once you've enabled the process with the cloud?
Well, probably a twofold answer to that. With the cloud, it definitely provides the ability to leverage all situations across the globe, if you will. But then there's the other thing about the closing process in general and how you go about that. So in my experience in the past, I've been in situations where if you have more than 15 days there, I'd probably fall into that bucket in many cases. I think if you take a step back and look at your closing process, you'll find that there are certain things that you can do that can expedite that. But then you have to obviously have the tool to make it happen and all come together, and that's where the cloud lends it. So what I would tell you is for billion-dollar companies, we've been able to get the close down to 2 to 3 days. In a couple of cases, 1 day. I'm sure you've in the past heard about Cisco, and they talk about closing their books in 1 day. That's definitely capable, and ironically, in the small to mid-sized business segment, you might be surprised that it sometimes can take longer than a global entity to do the close. So the cloud definitely enables it, and then you have to do a little diligence on what your processes are to make sure you're doing the right thing, and then can leverage the tool to do it for you.
Great, Tom. And with that, I'll give you back the show for us.
Well, thank you. So budget finance is held hostage to the IT budget. And so there's two wonderful research groups out there. I'm sure you've heard of them. We have Gartner on the left and the Aberdeen group on the right. But the typical IT budget allocation, and this is for an organization itself, roughly 91% of that budget is usually allocated to maintenance, right? So maintaining the application, putting in fixes, whatever it might be, paying the maintenance fee to the vendor, and really 9% is allowed to make things better, faster, cheaper, innovate, whatever you might want to choose there. When you look at the Aberdeen group, and what they're talking about is when you break this down further, what they're saying and what their study came back with is about 66% of that IT spend is maintaining old versions of products, meaning that you haven't upgraded to the next one, or you are going to go through an upgrade. So there's a lot of time, effort, and expense spent on maintaining the status quo. So what's interesting about this this information here, this graphic, is that it's very interesting that you're spending a lot of time managing what you do because it's the way you used to do it, if you will. You're not really focusing on taking the organization to that next level, really trying to leverage the technology that's out there and being able to have the latest and greatest versions on a real-time basis. So let's talk about the global cloud ERP the right way. There's a nice graphic here that was built. But the concept I talked to you about before, where there's this disparate group of databases, right? People, subsidiaries have their own databases. Even within the subsidiary, manufacturing may have its own, sales has its own, finance has its own. The concept of putting everything on one database is extremely important here, because what it does is anybody who's interacting with the system, whether they're on the sales, support, or service side, and they're interacting with the CRM component, or it's e-commerce, if you have e-commerce sales or whatever, and the inventory, the degradation of the inventory, and the financials. So what's happening with those financials? Customers put on credit hold with AR aging. To have all this on one platform means this, that when you're interacting with the system, there's no need for you to have another system, to patch two systems together, to put middleware in between so you can get some reporting and insight. What this does is it puts everything on that one platform, so everything going into the system is reported and reportable, and you can pull information out of the system and know that it's consistent across that supply chain I talked about earlier, that order to cash, if you will, how the company is operating, and all the piece points and information and activities that go into what makes up that company's performance. So looking at the global cloud ERP kind of the right way, if you will, so we're on that single source of data. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to be even a little bit more exact and a little bit more detailed, whereas on the local level, the local subsidiary, if you will, you can have it operating in the currency of that particular country. You can set up quotas that are very specific for that local entity. The forecast is particular to that entity, again, in its own currency, language. You're now being able to be compliant with the taxation requirements, because what's built into these cloud applications is the real-time update. If there's a major tax change, they will do the update, and it'll be available to you, in the IT world the next day. Maybe it takes a couple days or weeks, but the point being is they're leveraging, or you're leveraging their expertise to get the application to be compliant for that local requirement, right? Also, the partners you have in that territory, think about the different languages. So being able for, let's say, partners in Spain to be able to interact with the system in Spanish is pretty important, and you technically don't have to do anything but leverage what's in the system itself. And that lends itself to the website too, right? So making sure you have a website in the local language, I would argue, is probably a good thing to do if you want to make sales. And then taking a step back on the global level, right at the top there, we've got consolidation. Extremely important, right? We want to be able to consolidate results and be as accurate and efficient and as timely as possible. But even the ability to have more insight into certain aspects of the business, sales, not only at the global level, but drilling all the way down even to the particular operating entity that's in a particular country, to really see what's going on, to really understand what products are being sold and what prices are being sold at, and what is the time to fill an order, if you will. This capability exists, and it makes you, I would say, I use the analogy of NASA and Apollo 13. You can know everything about what's going on with an entity, almost down to the individual, say, in a sales situation. So, and then we've talked about the currency management, compliance control, and you have several websites. But To have something where it's 15 different languages in general, there's over 170 currencies and beyond that. So to be able to have that stuff updated real time is pretty impressive, and you don't have to really allocate any IT resources to do that. The vendor, the cloud vendor, is doing this minute by minute, day by day, 24/7, 365. And another polling question.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Our next polling question is around the areas that offer you the biggest challenge in terms of closing your books. We always talk quite a bit about people, process, and technology. Tom, as we have the polling question up, I would like to ask you, as you've upgraded your technology to be cloud and best-in-class and world-class, how have you made sure that the people and process kind of upgrade with the technology so you maintain the alignment between those three?
Yeah, and what I've found, so when you are going to do this, anytime you're going to go through change, it's obviously a fun experience to say the least. But what I find with people interacting with cloud applications is the learning curve is usually a lot quicker relative to some of the on-premise versions of systems that are out there. So that being said, number one, they're familiar with the internet. They've bought something on Amazon. For lack of a better example, you'd be surprised at how intuitive the user interface on some of these applications can be. The other thing that's pretty important here is you can limit, the word limit isn't good, focus that individual on all things they need to be worried about, or responsible for. And I use the concept of, I usually tell the person in AP, I tell them you're the chief executive officer of accounts payable. What does that mean? Well, everything that they need to know can be condensed down into a specific role so that when they turn on their system every day, they get real-time information on just about everything that they need to be able to do their job, do it very efficiently, and frankly not be distracted by all the extraneous issues that might tend to come up without focusing in on those responsible areas.
Thank you very much, Tom. Leave the poll open a few more questions. Again, we appreciate everyone's consideration in answering. Those of you for CPE credit, you'll need to answer all of our polling questions. And with that, I'll go ahead and close the poll, and I'll turn the floor back over to Tom. Tom?
Thank you, Ernie. So let's go back up there. I apologize. So the secret for an efficient consolidation process, and please don't share this with anybody because I'm sure you would have never thought of any of this on your own, but let's talk about it in a little bit of detail. So real-time financial consolidation and transparency. So with the cloud, what you literally have is you can have, as long as you have a high-speed internet connection, you can access the information, right? And depending upon your credentials, let's assume you're the president of the company or whatever, you have the ability to drill down from, if we did $1 million in sales globally, all the way down to, what was the invoice for a particular customer in Asia. You have that ability now. You also have the ability to do what is the multidimensional reporting, right? So you can satisfy those requirements on a worldwide basis, on a regional basis, on a country basis, and down to the local basis. So again, global companies, various things. I think all of you I talk about sales tax here in the U.S. I mean, being able to be compliant with that is a wonderful experience, to say the least. But now this application that you can be using has that information embedded within it. So if there's a sales tax change in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we go from 4% to 4.2%, it's updated real time. So if you're in a retail business, the sale that they may have made yesterday would be at 4%. The sale they're going to make today is going to collect 4.2%. It is that profound and that efficient and that capable when you leverage the cloud applications that are available to you today. Country-specific financial and regulatory compliance. So every country is somewhat different, as many of you know. And so when you get into this compliance need, how do you go about paying your taxes locally and in that local currency? As far as calculating it and how you're going to put it together, having the system that's already going to have inherent within it those currency exchange rates at the certain time that you're required to pay, to literally be able to generate a report that's going to have all the details necessary all the way down to the net payment you need to make. And then you can, depending upon whatever the requirements are, file that with a particular entity, country, whatever, or provide that information to your accounting firm if you're leveraging them, which, quite frankly, makes your job a lot easier and their job a lot easier. So not only to be compliant, but to be efficient and fast in doing it, all right? So it becomes more of a, I hate to use the term push the button, but if you set it up appropriately, that's technically what we're talking about here. Now let's talk about something near and dear to my heart, and that is the chart of accounts. And what you find with a lot of these cloud applications is you don't have to set up your chart of accounts so that you can do detailed reporting. Meaning, if you want to know what customer or product profitability is, or country profitability, you don't have to set up certain accounts so you can generate a report like that. The point I'm trying to make here is you can come up with a chart of accounts that in most cases might be perfect for wherever you're operating in the world, or if there are some very unique things that you might need by a subsidiary, you can just add those items. So you don't have this chart of account that is, or chart of accounts that's 1,000 pages long. Frankly, you've got to have a chart of accounts that's maybe 200 items. That's pretty profound, particularly when you're talking about expediting your close process. So the ability to do that, but more importantly, the ability to have people interact with that on a global level is pretty helpful in terms of expediting your close and consolidation process. The intercompany journal entries, you can literally post them from a single screen. So if you want to do an intercompany journal entry across 7 different subsidiaries, you can do it in one screen so you can see everything that's going on, make sure everything's the way you want it before you press the button and submit the journal entry. So again, a way to have everything on that single platform and a way to make sure that you're being consistent across the board, company by company, sub by sub, up to the world headquarters. Automate cumulative translation adjustments. So when we talk about, we have things going on with currency in the different countries that we may operate in, you now have the ability to drill down to each account for an audit. So if you do get audited on some of this stuff, whether it's whatever entity is going to be auditing you, you've got the detail behind how you came up with the calculation. Not only here's the exchange rate multiplied by the dollar, multiplied by that local dollar amount, but you also have the detail that builds up to that. So if people need to drill down on it, auditors, they can see that information. Really, if you give them access to your account, they can probably do it anywhere in the world. So another way to maybe reduce some of those costs too. Automate period end reval. So if you set the system up in such a way from a revaluation standpoint, whether that's inventory, currency, whatever, you can have the system automate that at the end of every period. And for some of you out there who have to do some of this work, I can tell you to be able to literally put together the revaluation scheme in the system, and then at the end of the period be able to press the button and the reval runs. That in and of itself could be a reason to adopt some of these cloud applications and setting things up. And then ultimately, I guess what we're talking about here is simplifying that extend and close process and having that complete audit trail. So if everything is on that one database and everybody's interacting technically with the same system, whether they're based in China or whether they're based in Denver, Colorado, you now have this simplified process by which we're closing very consistently across the board. But as we close, there's a complete audit trail all the way down to the actual user who may have recorded a journal entry, who entered a sales order, who processed an invoice. So the visibility down to the individual is available if it's needed. Again, leveraging the cloud, everybody on that same platform, making that process as efficient as possible, and we're consolidating quickly and compliant across the board. So here's the next thing. One of the products that is a cloud ERP is a product called NetSuite. And a lot of these companies, Salesforce.com, et cetera, they have this concept of the dashboard. And for those of you out there who want to do reporting and want to have visibility into the company, the question is, okay, dashboards are great, but if you go back to the slide that I showed where you've got all these different entities, you have all these different applications, if you're going to get a dashboard that brings everything together, then in and of itself, you're probably going to have to set up another subsidiary that's going to do nothing more than maintain all the bridges between all these disparate applications and put everything together and then try to put it in a concise format and way so that you can view it and get a perspective, a 360 view of your company from that corporate headquarter level all the way down to the local entity in Europe. So what we're showing here in terms of this dashboard, and you can obviously set up a dashboard in different ways, but what's coming out of this dashboard, this information, is on that single source of data, that single database. So the point I'm trying to make here is when we look at sales, and they're down 98.7%, so things are not great, but the thing I would point out to you here is this is a real-time reporting mechanism. So what you're seeing here is this month for sales, and obviously if the date being, let's say today, which is January 10th, you're not going to obviously have a full month's worth of sales in the system. But what you can start looking at is you can start to get an idea of whether you think you're going to have a problem or not. You can drill down on sales. You can download some reports and look at them and analyze them and say, okay, where were we through the first 10 days of the prior month, right? And you can start to get some perspective on where you are as a company, where you are as a division, and all the way down to that local level. But again, everything that you see here on this dashboard, you literally have the capability to drill down to that initial item, that initial transaction, be it a sales order, an invoice, whatever. So you have the visibility to go all the way down to that level. If you need to, doesn't mean you have to, but the ability is there. And the point I'd make, the ability is there because you're interacting with the system. You didn't have to come up with middleware. You didn't have to comprise various feeds into a data mart or data warehouse, whatever you might want to call it. You didn't have to buy another piece of software that's going to give you pretty looking dashboards with colorful charts and trend graphs and all the other stuff. So what I'm trying to point out here is the fact that this is all in a single database. Every piece of information is able to be reported on, and you can build this for a dashboard to what you care about. So here you're kind of looking at it, and it's more of a CFO dashboard. But as I alluded to earlier, if I have somebody who's the Chief Executive Officer of Accounts Payable, I can have their dashboard, or they can set up their dashboard the way he or she wants, so that they're really looking at the things that they should be focused on and that they care about, frankly. So the ability to do that, the ability to have everything there, and literally, it is point and click, but the ability to drill down on everything to the lowest level of how the transaction started, it is absolutely possible with a cloud-based ERP that everything is sitting on that single database. So let's take this down a little bit lower, talking about reporting, right, and the subsidiary perspective on that reporting. So what you see here is what we can do from that. If I go up here again, we have accounts receivable, right? Well, you can click on one of these receivables right here, and if I were to click on that, what that would do for me, the way the system is set up, is it's going to bring me right to an AR agent summary. So, I mean, you can go in, you can pull up the AR agent summary separately, but hey, you can literally click on that, and boom, I get my AR aging, and I can see this more on a global level, right? As we're looking at this, we see it by Nelson Holdings, which is the parent company, but then we can see Germany, and then we can also see the individual customers down below that in euros, right? And now maybe we want to drill down into Germany and drill down into a specific customer to get more perspective, what's really going on here for this entity, so that we can understand not just the subsidiary level, but we want to get some detail on that subsidiary or maybe even that customer. So up top, we look up here and we've got the Karstadt 12, and they are based in Germany, but we want to get a little bit more detail on our friends there. And so now, here I am, sitting at the corporate level, and I am down in the subsidiary. I'm even down to the customer within that subsidiary, and I'm getting some perspective. And if you look, there are certain tabs here. I won't go into all of them, but we'll just focus on the financial here right now. And this gives me a quick snapshot from a financial perspective on what's going on with this customer. And you can see that their terms are net 30. Their credit hold is on auto, so we may have set it up if they're over a certain dollar amount in days, it's automatically going to put them on credit hold. It shows what balance they owe. It shows also the overdue balance. Down here you can see it's aged, current, 1 to 30 days, and so on. You can see that how many days are overdue on certain payments. So we get a 52-day overages. That's probably not that bad, but ideally we'd like to maybe get on this. And we can look at what unbilled orders are. So in some cases we may have pending orders out there. So the reason why I just wanted to roll through these 3 different dashboards is to show you how you can go from the highest level. My company made $100 million last month, to drilling down into what's happening with that company in terms of the detail last month or even real time this month. Where do we stand with this particular customer? So you have the ability to do that, literally point and click. But what you're looking at here now is, think about this. You've got folks over in Germany that are entering this information. interacting with the system in German, but you're interacting with the system in English. And now you get perspective on what's going on. And now you've got resources that are, throughout the world, if you will, that are interacting with the same system that you are on a real-time basis. So the information flow is pretty quick, pretty accurate, and I would argue very, very timely. So let's talk now a little bit about cloud versus on-premise, global management, or just in general. It doesn't have to be consolidation, but let's just talk about cloud versus on-premise. And let's think about what some of the differences are and what some of the issues are that we can run into. So with subsidiaries, departments, whatever, IT resources are required. Well, in the case of the on-premise situation, yes, they are required, right? Because you're going to have folks there that not only speak the language, can interact with the people at the local level, can do the patches, update, make sure their systems are capable to access their system, VPN, whatever it is they're doing, or even having to be in the office. In other words, you can't even access the system unless you're in the four walls of the office. You need to have IT resources that can do that, and I would argue they need to be on site. They can't be folks that are consultants and managing several different companies. When you think about a cloud-based ERP, and let's say we do have an upgrade that's necessary, or a tax law is changed, or you name it, what's going to happen on the cloud side is the entire entity, a global workforce, frankly, and most of these top-notch cloud ERP providers, you're going to have people that are being very diligent and updating and putting in immediate updates if necessary to the application. So technically, like I was saying before, if you charged a certain level of sales tax yesterday, but now there's been a major change in sales tax, so when you turn the system off and come in the next day, that's already available to you. You don't have to worry about, am I collecting the right amount of sales tax? You will be collecting the right amount of sales tax. That required no IT involvement. It just required you to log off on back end, frankly. So from an IT resource standpoint, leveraging the cloud, again, can be a godsend. Think about the distributed finance and collaboration. And this is something that I would argue, don't just assume that's a global thing. It could also be a local thing, meaning in the city you work in. Imagine having people being able to work from home, to input accounts payable, to actually cut a check. Imagine being able to cut a check without literally having to go in the office and print anything out. You can do that with cloud-based ERP systems very efficiently. I'm not saying you can't do that with some on-premise ones, but trust me, the cloud ERP systems provide that capability, and it's amazing what you can do. So not only can you have collaboration even when, let's say, the same state, but that concept is worldwide. You can have collaboration with people in China, people in Europe, and people in the U.S. You have the ability to literally be real-time synced in terms of what's going on with the business and allowing people to interact with the system on a real-time basis. Having the subsidiary detail, I showed you that in terms of the dashboards, but it's real-time. So, in some cases, let's say you're a big retail operation. You could literally have retail reports every day where, in the past, let's say you had to be McDonald's in some regards to know how much each store is selling in the last hour. If you use cloud-based ERP systems, you can literally know what your stores are selling on a real-time basis because it's automatically entering into the system, and you can view it real-time. So it's pretty important if you need to be on top of things on a real-time level to have that visibility. And frankly, you're not paying any more for that. In other words, that functionality is there because, again, we're all interacting with the same database. We're all connecting into the same system. We're all leveraging the same chart of accounts, so on and so forth. Next, the local tax and regulatory changes. Again, I think I've talked about this pretty much, but automatic is a pretty important word here, right? So as the tax laws change and you're doing sales, the last thing you want to do is do some sales, and then you have to go back and manually make sure you're going to collect more cash from a particular customer, and frankly, good luck with that. So you need to want to make sure you're kind of real-time on that too. Push subsidiary financials. So how do you get these financials uploaded? Usually, in the schematic we showed earlier, you're going to have to get some involvement with IT to be able to consolidate it, put it in a certain format so you can import it or key it in, whatever it is. But in the case of a cloud-based ERP, single platform, single database, it's built in. You press the button, you get the consolidated reports. And then in some cases, like I was saying, you do have the ability to do some subsidiary customization. So whether it's a chart of accounts or something else in your company that might require certain types of changes, you have the ability to do that and put it down to the local level so that people can access it, whether they're employees of the company or whether they're partners. Whether you have a supply partner, wherever it might be, you have the ability to customize it at that local level if it's necessary. So I'll close with this slide and talk about global business management and how you can transform your finance performance. And again, I do want to make a comment. Don't just think this is a global thing. This could be a local thing, as I was mentioning, everybody working in the same state. You want to be able to transform your performance, right? So you can stay on top of the latest accounting changes. So as accounting requirements change, the way the reports are going to be generated, whether it's a balance sheet or income statement here in the U.S. or in another country, that change is going to be coded into the system so that your reporting capabilities will be consistent with that change and that upgrade that the ERP cloud provider has made. When you think about a distributed finance organization or workforce for that matter, imagine being able to literally scale that or up or down, depending on how your company is doing, where when somebody would come in that's new or you open up a new subsidiary, the rollout is, here's your login information, log in, I'll take you through what you have to do. You don't have to put any servers out there. You don't have to have an IT organization go out there. Literally, you can probably do it over the phone or via, as we're doing here right now, a GoToMeeting. Think about the real-time concept that I mentioned. You can consolidate in real time. So the other thing, depending upon how arduous and what rigor you want to put into your process, you could literally close the books every day if you wanted to, or once a week, or whatever it is that you feel might be necessary. But what's important about that now is you're not just consolidating it. I have a number for accounts receivable. I can drill down to the aging report for every particular subsidiary. I can see which subsidiary has a longer DSO than the next one, and I can determine whether that's a specific thing to the country or, frankly, they should be doing a better job of collection. So that detailed visibility is pretty important as we move forward here in the brave new world. And as far as I mentioned the customization on the subsidiary level, you have the ability to do that, but more importantly, you have the ability to control it. So at the highest level, you can make sure how you want to configure it and set it up. You can control that, and you can determine how you want to have that subsidiary interact with the system. And what this also can allow you to do by embracing the cloud is you can now start to grow without needing those local IT resources, right? So you can leverage what you have relative to the cloud and your cloud provider, and you can focus on more what I would call the user experience. So IT becomes more of a purveyor of leveraging and making that user experience as best it can be. So focusing on how the hardware they're using to access the internet works and what browser they're using and those things versus trying to configure and set up that computer with all the bells and whistles that are needed. And frankly, at the end of the day, now you can reallocate that IT budget for more of a maintenance, standpoint and focus to more of an innovative focus where you can leverage the latest and greatest that are coming down the pipe. And you then can, make sure that you're delivering it to the workforce literally, within a 24-hour push of a button scenario. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Ernie and be happy to answer any questions.
Oh, thank you very much, Tom. I'm going to go ahead and launch our final polling question, then we're going to jump right into the Q&A so we can take full advantage of the opportunity to tap into Tom's great expertise. I have a question for you, Tom, around the polling question. So our final polling question is around the biggest bottleneck that you experience in your accounting and financial close. So a few of the answers here we have are corporate close, entity close, and consolidations. Can you speak to right now what your biggest bottleneck is and then maybe how that has changed from the time when you didn't used to be leveraging the cloud so well?
Yeah, I mean, all of these would come into play, but I would say the biggest thing is the entity close, and it goes back to the situation where you've got all these disparate systems and different types of capabilities, and the communication, if you will, is not very succinct and accurate. So being able to make sure that the entities are closing on time, number one, and making sure that entity information is accurate has been usually the biggest issue. Now, using the cloud, as I mentioned throughout the presentation, now I have those entities interacting with pretty much the same chart of accounts, pretty much the same type of rigor around the close process. And not only do they close it quicker, but I also have the ability and capability to look in and see what's going on to make sure that things are progressing, to be able to close the books on a timely basis. So, and I can do that here from America for entities, across the globe.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. I'm going to leave the polling question up for just another 10 or 15 seconds or so. And we'll go ahead and transition into our first question. First question, Tom, is around the fact that there was some implication that the maintenance goes away on some level when you move to the cloud. And someone's asking if you can explain what amount goes away and why that maintenance goes away.
So with the cloud, or what you're doing with a cloud application, is you're paying an annuity type of a deal, right? So I'm going to sign a contract for a year, and I'm going to pay a certain dollar amount each month to use the application. So by doing that, what I'm talking about with maintenance is you're not paying maintenance for what the on-premise provider will do is say, you pay 20 grand, and you can call us, we'll help you out. If we have an upgrade or a patch, you get it for free, whatever. What happens with the cloud, you're paying a fee each month or each year, whatever you negotiate with the cloud provider. And now what you're doing is they're going to come out with the changes. So like I was saying, if there's a patch that's needed, if there's a bug issue, if there's a compliance change that needs to be incorporated into the application, they're going to do it, and it's immediately available to you. So the maintenance component completely goes away. You're getting the latest and greatest version of the software on a real-time basis. And frankly, you don't have to go through all the, we're going to be upgrading the system, so we're going to shut it down for the whole weekend, and then as we all know, we come in on Monday and we're still trying to bring up the new version of software, and it's going all the way through Friday. So that whole concept of maintenance and what happens goes away with the cloud. It's more, think of it as a real-time upgrade where you turn the system off and turn it back on, and the latest, greatest version is available to you.
Okay, great, thanks. Before we cycle through a few more questions, I just want to remind everyone, if you have questions to ask, go ahead and ask those in your questions area of your go-to control panel. Tom, someone's asking you to maybe give a little bit more color around how the cloud apps are customized to an individual business, and then when that customization happens, who does that work in general?
Okay, so usually with a cloud application, there's two words that I use. There's the customization, which is what you would think it is. I'm going to, change the way something looks or change the way a purchase order is closed in the system. And then there's the word called configuration. So let me talk about configuration. So let's say you as a company have a purchase order or a purchasing process by which there is, you have to do a PO, and then maybe there's 3 levels of approval, and then it finally gets to the point where you can generate the purchase order and, communicate with the vendor and so on, bring everything in. You can configure the system to put all that rigor into that process. But let's just say, frankly, you're an organization that you can just generate the purchase order and it can go right to the vendor. You can configure the process to work that way as well, so there's not all these workflow steps in between. So there's the ability to do that, and you can configure these systems in several different ways. I don't want to give people the impression that any possible, way you can do, it's limited, but I would tell you, 80-20, or frankly more like 90-10. You don't need to recreate a purchasing process. The one that's built in, and now you can configure it, 4 or 5 different ways, I believe will more than suffice for your organization. Now, conversely, and somebody said, customizing this for a subsidiary, also there's configuration capabilities for that, right? So if you're in a global situation and you have a certain entity and there's certain things that happen depending upon where you're operating in that country, whether it's Africa or whatever, things may be different. What's going to be built into the application is the configuration ability to make some of those choices, right? But maybe there's something very specific to what you're doing in a particular country that you do have to customize something. In the case of NetSuite, it's called suite scripting. You learn, it's development, if you will, but you're putting this together and you're customizing it in a certain way. But then the nice thing about this is it's going to sit on that single database, like I told you before. And then when things do change, right? So if NetSuite comes up with a newer version or whatever, there's a change in configuration, that script is still going to act the way it did. It's still going to do what it did, and you don't necessarily have to worry about it breaking. In other words, where in the other concept. You've got an on-premise situation, and you've got this feed to another system. You have to keep both those systems in sync, and you have to keep that middle web service script, or whatever it might be, in sync as well. So you're constantly, looking at that. So there is customization capability, but even within that, it's a little bit more efficient when you're leveraging some of these cloud ERP applications.
Okay, great, thanks. Someone's asking, they're all interesting questions, a particularly interesting question. So let's say for the assumption that you have a decentralized business model, what type of governance structure do you think must be in place in order to migrate to a successful cloud environment in that decentralized business model?
So meaning, like, in general, what is the company going to put in place? Like, how should we interact as individuals and as a company? Is that what, or are you talking about governance for a particular country?
I think they're talking for the company. So the governance structure. So you have a decentralized business model, and then there's the governance structure, and so they're in maybe a siloed environment. So how do they maintain that control? I would say, in governance and all that, and all
right.
the necessary compliance issues when they go to this, if they go to this more centralized cloud environment.
Right. So the what I was talking about earlier, where you set up a role, right? So you want to. So as an example, you wouldn't want all employees to have access to detailed payroll data, right? So in that regard, what you can do with the cloud system is you can set up certain requirements, certain roles that are limited to what they should have access to, and nothing more. So in the case of having a decentralized group, you can configure the system in such a way that it's only going to give that user the information they should have access to. And then let's now take that a step further, where let's say you have a decentralized sales force, and they're working out of their home office, and they're across the United States or across the world. You can put certain rigor in how they put together a sales quote. So if they're going to try to put in a sales quote, and there's a requirement to, I don't know, to have a zip code, or there's a requirement to have a dollar amount, or there's a requirement to get a signature because a certain country requires that, and it just even on the sales order process, you can configure that within the system. And then when that person is trying to, let's say, put in that sales order, if they don't do what you've configured the system, the checks and balances, if you will, it won't let them do it. So you do have the ability to control things globally to make sure everybody's interacting with the system the way they should be, and to make sure that that interaction is compliant with whatever the particular requirements are, whether it's by specific subsidiary or whether it's a global requirement. So that's one thing. The other thing I would tell the person to do is there's a concept out there today called work shifting. If you Google it, you'll probably find stuff. And the concept behind work shifting is simply this. There's no reason anymore for you literally to be in the office to get your work done. And studies have shown that you actually are probably more efficient and more productive if you don't have to come into the office all the time. And this is, again, I don't want people to think this is not just a sales thing. This could be any or any department thing, any employee thing, finance, payroll, administrative assistant, you name it. You have the ability to literally work remotely, and as long as you're connected into the system like we've talked about, and you're all on that same sheet of paper, that database, it has its requirements and configurations set up, you'd be amazed at what you can offer a workforce. Now, I don't want to get into all the details of it, but if you go to that workshop thing, it'll talk about how you can make people stay connected, how you make sure, virtual water cooler, if you will, if that's the concept you want to think of. But you're capable to do that. But again, I go back to even, I talked about the tool. You have to give people the tool to be able to do their jobs. You can't just say, we're going to work remotely now and, good luck. Now you have the ability to deliver the information to them, have them deliver the information to the system so that we're all, in sync, if you will.
Okay, great. Just want to circle back, to the decentralized business model. There was kind of a follow-up comment that I hopefully can do a better job of communicating the question. So if you're in a decentralized business model, has in the past given you the opportunity to move away from disparate practices and codes and processes and kind of push those down the chain easier, and how does the cloud facilitate that?
So I guess maybe I'm not understanding the question, but what I would say is when I talk about we're going to configure the system in certain ways so that certain workflows are going to be embedded within the system, certain requirements are going to be embedded within the system, I don't want to, this is not the right word, but it forces us to interact with the system the way the organization wants us to interact with that system. So whatever the requirements are, whatever the procedures are, you can literally almost embed those in the workflow of the application so that people are, accessing it and interacting with it in that fashion.
Okay, great. Take one more question. Again, if we have any questions we don't get to, we'll follow up with Tom and get those up on Proformative. One of the things that we saw in the big hairball was kind of this top-down. The cloud is at the top, and then everything kind of falls under there. Can you speak to, are there situations where companies start maybe on the bottom and do a cloud application into a subsidiary or an acquisition and then move that up, kind of up to the top corporate level? Is that something that's happening, or does that work well?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, what has been happening is when you look at some of these subsidiary countries, what organizations are doing is they may have, pick your the big boys up there at the top, the on-premise ERP, but for the local level, that subsidiary, they may use something like NetSuite to manage and monitor the business. So what is happening is you're seeing this situation where at the subsidiary level they may be leveraging a cloud application, whereas at the corporate level they're still embedded with the on-premise version where companies have spent hundreds of millions of dollars, so I'm sure the shareholders don't want them to just throw it out the door. So that is happening, and what we're also starting to see now is, so it's going to the subsidiary level. Now the division is saying, well, why don't we just do it too? We can make our process a lot simpler, and it's it's kind of bubbling up from the bottom, if you will. But the point about that schematic is you can go in either direction. You can start at the top and work down. You can start at the bottom and work up, and frankly, you can start in the middle and work both down and up. So, that's the beauty of this, where you can put stuff in, and it's very nimble and very capable, and you can get it done very quickly. So that's what I'm personally seeing in probably the last 12 months or so.
Great, thanks, Tom. With that, I'd like to go ahead and close the Q&A session. We'd like to convey our sincerest gratitude to Tom for his time and insights. Those of you in the audience, if you'd like us to connect you directly with Tom, please indicate that on the survey. We'll ask you to take immediately at the conclusion of the webinar. We appreciate your consideration there as well, because that helps us get better and do a better job of maximizing the ROI of your time. Again, Tom is clearly a leader in his field and an excellent source of information on today's topic. So if you have any questions for Tom, we'd like to, again, thank our sponsor, NetSuite, whose commitment to thought leadership allows us to offer this event to you for free. On a closing note, regarding the cloud and leveraging technology, I just want to share with the audience, we are taking this commitment to educate our professionals in leveraging technology across the enterprise with the full-day conference at Proformative. So we invite you to experience that full-day event, all that technology one day under one roof. We also invite you to bring your IT leaders as well, as we know the role of IT is being redefined. So we'd like to play a lead role in building those bridges and those relationships. With that, again, I would like to thank everyone for your valuable time, and we look forward to seeing you at Proformative.com and Proformative. Have a great day, everyone.